While we shoot this video, Israel and Hamas, after 11 days of conflict, have agreed to a ceasefire. This thing is nothing new, but this time it means more. The Israel-Palestine conflict have been going on for 7 decades by now. The history is complicated, but there is no question on the human rights violation, war crimes and forced occupation of the Palestinian land. And you'll find thousands of content regarding it on the internet. But let's talk about the narrative and the politics that work here. And challenge the narrative that has been set by the people in power who has been responsible for protecting their very own citizens. You'll see an entire Twitter floating around with several world leaders supporting it and a hashtag trending, which includes hashtag Israel under attack, hashtag Israel's right to self-defense, hashtag I stand with Israel. This includes your favorite hot humanitarian king Justin Trudeau as well, and several thousand of people that has come in support in Twitter and different social media. Even after children, hospitals, schools, media outlets and refugee centers are being bombarded by the Israeli force in the name of self-defense. To check it out, team and I went to the Facebook account of the Israel Defense Force and their official Twitter account, which by the way looks like Kangan is using it after she got banned from Twitter. I would be lying if I didn't say that their video was not convincing enough and their PR team has done exceptional work bringing up their own narrative to the world, which clearly depicts their idea that hashtag Israel under attack. But what we really need to do is to break down narratives, because hashtag Israel under attack is a real popular shit right now and it needs to be answered. Israel has constantly showing this video of their Iron Dome working above Tel Aviv, which Benjamin Netanyahu is manipulating civilians and others to make bullshit justification for his own political gain, more like a political lifeline, which we will talk about later. No, I'm not saying killing any innocent civilians is justified, but if you are using it to justify your colonization, your forced occupation, your human rights violation, and especially for your political gains, it is surely something that sounds like a war crime. But never mind, it's just self-defense. If you think the world's potential influencer have called out this action, you're completely wrong. Popular content creator Nas Daily have wrote a 363 words letter status, but have failed to acknowledge the violence, the inhuman activities, the war crimes of the Israelis, and dehumanize the struggle of the Palestinian people, being an Israeli Palestinian himself. Because Arabs and Jews can be best friends, just like you and your ex. Seems like you have only attended your 1 minute of your Harvard ethics and history class, which was probably a punchline from your professor. Seems like the international community have followed the same woke pattern that has been brainwashed by the Israel PR team, and it is silencing the international community.
It doesn't continue very long, but we were attacked by Hamas on our National Day, Jerusalem Day, attacks, unprovoked attacks on Jerusalem, and then thousands of rockets and missiles on our cities. And I think any country has to defend itself. It has a natural right of self-defense. We'll do whatever it takes to restore order and quiet and on the security of our people and deterrence. We're trying to degrade Hamas's terrorist abilities and to degrade their will to do this again. So it'll take some time. I hope it won't take long, but it's not immediate.
2,900 rockets
fire on our rockets and then sit back and enjoy immunity. That's false. We are targeting a terrorist organization that is targeting our civilians and hiding behind their civilians, using them as human shields. We're doing everything we can to hit the terrorists themselves, their rockets, their rocket caches, and their arms. An intelligence office for the Palestinian terrorist organization housed in that building that plots and organizes the terror attacks against Israeli civilians. So it's a perfectly legitimate target. And I can tell you that we took every precaution to make sure that there were no civilian injuries, in fact, no deaths, no injuries whatsoever. I can't say injuries. I don't know if somebody received a fragment of a stone. I don't know that. But no people were killed. Now imagine, ask yourself, how is that possible? You see these high-rise towers that are used by Hamas over and over again. They collapse and no one is killed. Why does that happen? Because we, unlike Hamas, take special precautions to tell people, leave the building, leave the premises. We make sure that everyone is gone before we bring down those terrorist facilities. And that's the difference between Israel and Hamas. They deliberately target our cities, deliberately target our civilians. They glorify the death of children and civilians and old people. They are happy with it. I think they're happy with any deaths that are caused to them. We grieve for every non-combatant loss in Gaza, and we grieve for all our civilians who die in Israel. We're not happy with it. And
Three things he tried to imply. One, they want peace. Second, they want to protect their own people. Third, Hamas is responsible for everything.
Although the former Republican Congressman Ron Paul once made this point on the floor of the House.
Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat.
Arafat himself told an Italian newspaper, quote, Hamas is a creature of Israel. He even claimed that former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin admitted as much to him, calling it a fatal error. Now, you might be wondering, why should I believe mad Ron Paul or the famously shady Yasser Arafat? Well, you don't have to. You can believe top Israeli and US officials who've basically owned up to all this. Brigadier Yitzhak Segev, for example, who was the Israeli military governor in Gaza, and later told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Islamic movement. The Israeli government gave me a budget, he said, and the military government gives to the mosques. Colonel David Hakam, who worked in Gaza in the late 1980s as an Arab affairs expert in the Israeli military, has admitted that the original sin was Israeli support for Yassin in the late 70s. But at the time, he has argued, nobody thought about the possible results.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may have gained a political lifeline from the ongoing violence between Israel and Palestine. Netanyahu looked to be on the verge of losing power, which he has held for the past 12 years. But the escalation of the current situation has given him extra time to make a political move. Israeli author, human rights and Palestinian activist Miko Pellet talks to US from Jerusalem.
So this is completely driven by Netanyahu. He knew that this was going to help cement his premiership, and it has. I mean, any negotiations for an alternate government without him have completely fallen apart. He's very strong now domestically, very popular domestically. He's very popular internationally as well. I mean, world leaders, everyone from the President of the United States to prime ministers in Europe and the Chancellor of Germany, Austria, and Germany are all supporting him 110%. Very, very strong. And this, of course, helps cement it because now his support is across the board. It's much easier for him to form a coalition right now. And he is.
Benjamin Netanyahu risked his own civilians' life in order to stay in power at the moment. And that explains a lot. Time and time again, the Operation Alaska shakes the displacement. The Israeli Defense Force has intentionally provoked the Hamas time and time again for their own agenda. What we have is our social media and our voices that needs to be heard far and farthest. And this is very important because the Israeli PR team has always been a maneuver to make their own narrative in front of the world. It's your time to voice up and stand for the right and to never stop it. Yes, standing up for the Palestinian is not anti-Semitism. It is something you need to do regardless of your race, religion, ethnicity, or nationality. Also, another last thing. Remember, don't put status that Hitler said, I could have killed all the Jews, but I left some to let people know why I killed them. Understand, Hitler didn't only hate Jews, but black, brown, disabled, and many others. And the descendant of the Nazi and the right wing who are supporting Islamophobia and many other things in Europe right now. Not only using this logic is absurd, but helps them to build their narrative. Do share this video only if you care and drop down your discussion in the comment box, and see you till next time when I'm not lazy again.